In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the brake master cylinder on this Hyundai Sonata. Located under the hood by the firewall on the driver's side, let's get started. Once you locate the master cylinder on the driver's side near the firewall, remove the cap. If there's a lot of dirt around it, wipe it off. Turn it counterclockwise and set it aside. Now let's remove all the old fluid that's in here. Do the best you can. Use a fluid extractor, a vacuum pump, whatever you have that'll get all this fluid out. That's all the brake fluid I'm going to be able to get out of it. Let's stop right there. On the side of the reservoir, you'll see this connector. I'm using a pick to pry up on this locking tab, and then I can just pull straight out on the connector itself. This is a level sensor. It's all right, we'll get that. Sometimes that locking clip falls out. We'll set this aside. I have some pads down here to absorb any brake fluid that might drip out at this point because we have to undo the lines, and to do that you need a 14mm wrench. I'm using a flare nut wrench. It's less likely to round off the fitting. Slide it over here and break this free. Once you break it free, you can switch to a regular open-ended wrench and just remove the fitting the rest of the way. Once again, brake fluid will leak out no matter how much you drain that master cylinder. There's always going to be some down at the bottom. There's one line, set that aside. Moving this one gives us a little bit more space to access this one. And there's the other line. Pull this out completely. Set these down here. And now we can unbolt the master cylinder from the brake booster. There are two 12mm mounting nuts that hold the master cylinder onto the brake booster. Let's remove both. With the mounting nut off, you'll see that there's a lock washer as well. Pull that off and save it. And there's another one on the opposite side. Kind of hard to see, somewhat difficult to reach, but if you have a ratchet wrench, you can stick your hand right down here and get this off. Now we'll be able to pull the master cylinder right off of the brake booster. And there it is. Inspect your brake booster where the master cylinder bolts on, and you want to make sure that it's clean. Get all this debris out of here. You want to make sure there's no dust. If you have corrosion, clean it off with sandpaper, a wire brush, whatever it takes to get yours nice and clean. And you want to make sure that everything seals up, especially right here. This looks great. So let's get the new master cylinder in. At the base of this master cylinder, there will be a rubber seal. You're going to have to remove this, and we'll transfer it over to the new one. Careful not to tear it. I'm using a pick just to gently unstick it. Usually these get stuck after being on there for a while. And I'm also being careful not to drip brake fluid. There we go. Pull this off. Inspect it. If it's in poor condition, it's just an O-ring, so install a new O-ring. On the rod of the master cylinder on the back side, when you get your new one, you'll see that it has a plastic cover. You have to remove that. Set that aside. I'm going to leave these in. These are just little rubber caps until the lines are ready to go on, just so debris doesn't get in there. But especially make sure you remove this plug. But make sure you remove this cap. Now take this seal and slide it over the master cylinder. There we go, just like that. And take that master cylinder, slide it in on the brake booster. Make sure that the master cylinder rod that sticks out connects with the one that goes or comes out of the brake booster. Line up the two mounting bolts, or mounting studs I should say, make sure they go through the hole. There we go. Press that down all the way. Before we do anything else, let's install the lock washers and the mounting nuts on the two mounting studs. Before I tighten that one, I'm going to put these on this side. With both on, let's snug this all up. Okay, that's tight. Snug up the other one. All right. Let's torque these two mounting nuts to 9 foot-pounds. Now, the one that's closest to the strut tower, you're probably not going to be able to torque. So just do the best you can. 9 foot-pounds is really not a lot. I can torque this one though, so I will. There we go. That was pretty much already there. At this point, I'm going to take my wrench, stick it back down there, and give it a quick snug. Okay. Just going to double check that it feels the same as this one. Yep, perfect. Let's remove the two plugs that cover up the holes where the lines go in. And what you want to do now is, with your master cylinder, there will be two little plastic fittings provided. They are going to be closed off, so I used a drill bit, drilled a hole through them, and I have some clear plastic tubing. The size of your hole is going to depend on your plastic tubing, so just drill appropriately, just so you can put this over. If you want to make brake lines to bleed the master cylinder out of some real brake line, you can do that and use some real metal fittings, but the plastic ones work just as good, and they are provided. So I'm going to thread these on into the master cylinder one at a time, and then loop the lines up and into the reservoir. I like to do this in the vehicle as opposed to on the bench because it's already mounted after we're done bleeding. It's ready to go, and you don't have to worry about transferring the master cylinder from the bench to the vehicle with a full reservoir. There we go. This one caught. I'm just going to thread it in and bottom it out. These don't really need to be tight, they just need to be snugged after you bottom them out, just so it doesn't leak at the fitting. But you're not putting pressure in it, you're just kind of pushing fluid through it. Take the cap off. This new master cylinder has a little screen in here that I'm going to remove, set aside in a clean area. This way we can stick our hose down in. And of course, if you have a metal line, you'd bend that and stick it in here. And we're going to install the other bleeder line that I made. Same way, just thread it on. Stick that down here as well. Let's add some brake fluid. This vehicle uses .3 or 4 brake fluid. I'm just going to fill this all the way to the top. All right, that's up to the max line, so I'm going to pause right there. What I will do now is go inside the vehicle, very slowly pump that brake pedal and push it all the way down to the floor. Keep it there for a second or two, and then slowly release. What that does is it'll cycle the brake fluid through the master cylinder, and of course through these lines it'll push all of the air out of the end of the line. It'll bubble up, and when I release the brake pedal, that's going to pull clean fluid back in. Let's do that a few times until we see no more air bubbles coming out. The fluid level is most likely going to drop just a little bit, so we'll have to top it off after. Just keep an eye on it, make sure there are no leaks, and get all the air out. Pressing the brake pedal really slowly. That's the floor right there. I'm going to hold it there for a second and releasing very slowly. Just going to do this about 10 times, then I'll go out and check it. This should cycle all the fluid through, get all the air out. All right, looks nice and clean. No more air bubbles. At this point, let's remove our bleeder lines And I have those absorbent pads underneath because there will be quite a bit of brake fluid leaking out as I remove these lines. I'm also going to be ready to immediately put in the real brake line. That way we lose the least amount of brake fluid. I'm starting with the rear because this is the one that I finished with when I removed them so that I can get a little bit more clearance. Okay, there's that. Quickly swap that in. Make sure this doesn't cross thread. Looks like this caught just right, so that's perfect. I'm going to bottom this out as quickly as I can and snug it with the wrench. I'm not worried about how tight it is right now. I just want it snugged so it stops leaking. That's perfect. Let's move on to the front line. We'll do the same exact thing. Okay, there's that one. Stick the line in and thread the fitting on. Perfect. All right. Once again, not worried about how tight it is. At this point, I want to clean up all that brake fluid, remove my pads that are now soaked, and then we will worry about tightening these lines fully. Spray this all down with some brake parts cleaner. Remove your pads or whatever you use to absorb the fluid. Let's snug these down. I'm using my flare nut wrench again. That way I make sure I have a good grip on these. I'm going to give them about 1/8 of a turn, at most a quarter, after they're fully bottomed out. Once again, I just want to make sure that they are nice and snug without damaging anything. There we go. Perfect. Let's plug in this connector again. I found the locking clip fell on the floor for me, so I just slid it right back over and make sure that clicks. Perfect, that's locked in. Let's drop this little screen back in, just like that. And at this point, we need to start bleeding the brakes. It's always important that you do that after you replace the master cylinder. We are now ready to start the bleeding procedure. The first caliper we're going to bleed is going to be the right rear caliper. That's the passenger side rear. We then cross over to the driver's side front. That's the left front caliper. Then, of course, top off that master cylinder so you don't run it too low on fluid. Then you go back to the left rear caliper. That's the driver's side rear. Lastly, you do the passenger side front or the right front, and then, of course, top it off again. After you've bled all 4 calipers, if the pedal feels spongy still, you want to bleed again in the same sequence until you're happy with how it feels. We are at the right rear caliper. This is where we're going to start. I'm going to pop off the bleeder screw cap first. Sometimes you can use a little pocket screwdriver for that. And then you're going to use a 10mm wrench to break this free. I also have an assistant in the vehicle ready to pump up the brakes, and they're going to hold pressure after a few pumps. That's going to push the fluid through the system. Additionally, I have a little reservoir with a hose that's going to collect all my fluid. And at this point, we are ready to start. So you can go ahead and pump. All right, they're holding, so I'm going to crack this open. We're going to have, oh, there we go, hit the floor already. We're going to have air and fluid come out. And you can go ahead and pump again. All right, holding pressure. Go again. We're just going to do this until we have no air bubbles and clean fluid coming out of this bleeder screw. All right, pump again. Okay, there are no air bubbles coming out, but the fluid is very dark, so let's go a few more pumps. Pump again. Okay, go again. Go again. All right, you can let go now. Remove this and clean off any brake fluid that may have dripped off. Use brake parts cleaner if needed, and cap off the bleeder screw. And now we're going to move to the left front. That's the driver's side front caliper. We're now at the left front caliper. Going to do the same thing. Pop the bleeder screw cap off and put my little collection receptacle on with the hose. Have a 10mm wrench ready, and go ahead and pump up the brakes. All right, holding pressure. Open this up. Go ahead and pump again. All right, pump again. All right, pump again. All right, let's do this one more time. Pump again. That's pretty clean right there. No air bubbles. You can let go. Take this off. Once again, wipe anything off that may have dripped. Use brake parts cleaner if needed. Cap this off. Now let's go top off that master cylinder. We've bled 2 calipers and we don't want it to get too low. And then we'll move to the right rear and then the left front to finish it off. Now let's top off the master cylinder, keep it nice and full, then move to the left rear caliper and bleed that one, and then finally finish off with the right front. Everything's all bled. Let's fill this up one last time, make sure it's up to the max line, and cap it off. Once everything is done, put the wheels back on, torque them to 79 foot-pounds in a cross pattern, and take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.